We meet again, my friend. Thank you for being here on my channel. My name's Gavin. We like to do true crime around here. We like to cut through to the nitty gritty. And that's what we're doing tonight. We are circling back around to a case that's important to all of us. It is the case of the continued and long-term abuse of Madeline Soto, culminating in her murder. And we have some new information that we're going to go through tonight. We're going to be going through some DNA. But just as a quick primer on the case, Madeline was 13 years old. She was described as having gone missing on February 26th of 2024. Of course, we now know she did not go missing. But reportedly, her mom's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Stephan Stearns, a man who has been arrested and is charged with her murder. Supposedly, his story was he took her to school on the morning of the 26th. That afternoon, the story goes, her mother, Jennifer Soto, went to pick her up from school. She was nowhere to be found. They looked for her all over the place, couldn't find her. Eventually, the police were called, and they did a whole investigation trying to find this little girl. But pretty early on, they started really focusing on Mr. Stearns, because on his phone, even though he tried to cover it up by wiping his phone twice, they found over 1,700 images and videos of him essaying Madeline. He was arrested and charged with her battery and her prolonged essay. And then on the 1st of March of 2024, just over a year ago, her body was found. It had been summarily discarded in a field next to a row of bamboo trees, shrubs, whatever you want to call them, bamboo. Okay, since that time, authorities have been building a case, and boy, do I think they have done a great job. Let's get his picture off here. Let's bring up Maddie. They have done a great job. Florida is beautiful in their transparency. We get a lot of stuff out of Florida, and this week, we got some good news in the form of a report from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Let's bring you over here. Join me over here on Acrobat. This is a lab report from the FDLE. This report is dated just a little over a week ago, and it is a DNA report. Now, it is a follow-up DNA report to another report that came out, it didn't come out, but it was dated April. Let me bring this up here. It was dated April 10th of 2024. And on this report, we see the evidence that was submitted to the FDLE lab and some of the results, which was great. But then on this report from March 10th, we get a little more information. But I think that where we should start here, without burying the lead, there is evidence, there's DNA evidence that ties Stephan Stearns to Madeline Soto. So that is terrific. In addition to all of the other circumstantial and direct evidence, we now have forensic DNA evidence, which in and of itself is direct evidence. But anyway, I thought that maybe we would start, and I'll just keep a picture of Maddie up here, trying to understand how DNA is used in law enforcement. And let's see, I prepared some notes over here. I'm not going to bring them up on the screen. Let's bring this up. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about DNA. By the way, it's going to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but my understanding of the way DNA in general, and then the way DNA is used in law enforcement, is superficial at best. But over the last 3 or 4 years, I've kind of gotten into it thanks to my friend, Dr. Matt Gruel, who is a professor of genetics and genomics over at Penn State Barron. He is a terrific resource for me, always answers my questions, really takes care of me, but his schedule precludes him from joining me very often. It's been a couple of years since he's been on the show. But anyway, okay, what is DNA? DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It is the building block. It is let's call it the blueprint. It's not really the building blocks, protein, other stuff is the building blocks, but it's the blueprint of life. Okay. It is composed, you can see on here, of what are called nucleotides, and there are 4 of them. And this is important. I'm not going to get totally down the rabbit hole on this. This is important as it applies to Madeline Soto. So bear with me here for a second, okay? These nucleotides are cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine, okay? And what happens is each one of these nucleotides is drawn to another, and they're bonded through a hydrogen bond, and they only pair with one another. So thymine pairs with adenine, guanine pairs with cytosine. So G is always with C, A is always with T, T is always with A, C is always with G. It's always that way, okay? Now, chromosomes are how these strands of DNA are organized. And in the human body, there are 46 chromosomes arranged in pairs. There are 22 paired numbers, and then there's an X or an XY, basically the sex chromosomes. Okay, so we're talking 23 pairs of chromosomes. We're not going to get too far down, I promise. So the chromosomes contain the genes that basically code who we are. Genes are little segments of each chromosome. But in between the genes inside the chromosome, there are areas that are still DNA. They are still the base pairs of nucleotides, but they are non-coding. They don't tell that part of the blueprint doesn't really code who we are. They're just kind of connectors between the genes, okay? And those little non-coding areas, those are the parts that are important for forensic DNA. Yeah, okay, so in those little bits, that's where short tandem repeats are found. And let me go to the next, and I wish I had 3 monitors here. Let me go to the next one. Okay, so actually, I think what I want to do, let me show you this one, okay? This is an image, a representation of our 23 pairs of chromosomes. And we're going to get into CODIS here in just a second, but you can see that there are labeled loci, they call them, labeled locations within our chromosomal pairs that are the non-coding areas. And they have them labeled, right? D3 is the third chromosome, S1358. That is a mapped location on the third chromosome. It is in a non-coding area. Okay. And the FBI uses its CODIS database. That's where this is from. It originally started with 13 core loci. Now there are 20 core loci. But when they're looking for DNA, they're looking in specific places in these chromosomal pairs. Okay. All right. Let me bring up my notes here one more time. Okay. So in the case that we're talking about, in Madeline's case, when we get to this report, they're doing what is called STR analysis. Do you see that where I've highlighted it there? STR analysis. Specifically, they're doing Y-STR analysis, which means they are on the Y chromosome. Now, why would they choose to do a Y chromosome analysis? Well, The most obvious answer is Madeline does not have a Y chromosome. So if there are Y chromosomes on any of the samples from Madeline, that must belong to a man. Does that make sense? So they're using the STR analysis, right? Let me get back over here. And we're going to come back over here. Okay, STR, what it stands for is short tandem repeat. So when we talk about these nucleotides, each base pair is a tandem of two nucleotides. Does that make sense? So if you were to go through a long strand of DNA and you were going to look at one side of that helical pair, so you're on that, the sugar phosphate side of these half pairs, there would be a code, right? And you could read it using the first letter of the four nucleotides, CGAT. So it would be like CG or CATTTC, and it would look completely random. And in the entire genome, there would be 2 billion characters in this one word that you would create by using the first letter of each nucleotide. When they're looking for short tandem repeats, they are looking for a code that repeats. So for example, if it went CTA, 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 that would be 3 repeats of that code CTA. Okay? And then what they do is they look at very specific places where it's non-coding and it tends to happen that there are repeats there, and they map them out using a system. I have a hard time remembering this word. Give me a second. The system is called capillary electrophoresis or phoresis. Electrophoresis, capillary electrophoresis. And basically what they do is after they've amplified the DNA using a process called PCR, which stands for, I can't remember what PCR stands for now that I think about it. It's polymerase. What does PCR stand for? I can't remember. Anyway, there's a process called PCR where it multiplies, it copies the DNA, right? And then using the capillary electrophoresis, they break it apart, and then they're able to look at these different parts of the DNA, and they're able to count the repeats. And at different loci, there are different repeats. Now, this is actually a graph from a case that I've been looking at for a long, long time. These are DNA samples. The higher that peak, the higher the number of repeats. Okay, so what we will see in this is a report from the Amanda Winkowski case. You can see on this side here, we're looking at the different loci inside the CODIS database, and they're on this axis, they're looking at different swabs, buccal swabs, vaginal swabs, and so forth, and they're able to see, okay, at D8S1179, there are repeats of 8, 10, 11, 13, and 14, and what they would determine there is that there are likely 3 specimens there. Okay, so hopefully that is a good enough understanding for what it is that we're getting into here. That's what we're doing. So they're doing this STR analysis. Let's head on back over to, polymerase chain reaction is what it's called. Okay, that's how they multiply DNA. Okay, so what they're saying in this report, let's just go over it real quick. So it's dated March 10th, 2025, a little over a week ago. It was sent to the interim chief of the Kissimmee Police Department. They are the investigating agency that has jurisdiction in this case. It is in regards to a death investigation from February 25th, 2024. That was the day that Madeline had her birthday party. And it says this report references evidence submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement on June 5th, 2024 by Rita Tavares. This report contains conclusions, opinions, and or interpretations made by the author. And it looks like the author is Carol Greenwell. She's a senior crime scene lab analyst 1 in the biology section. Okay, the evidence. The following evidence, container A, was submitted for YSTR DNA analysis. So for short tandem repeat analysis on the Y chromosome. And it says the DNA was extracted from items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.1, 8.2, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and the corresponding extraction blanks. Now, it doesn't say what those are. So let's go back to the previous report, and we'll just see what it is that they submitted. Okay, first, they submitted buccal swabs represented as being from Stephan Stearns. You guys remember in this video, they let me get this to a point where we can actually see. There we go. In this video, not only did they take pictures of him, very uncomfortably I might add, but they did swabs of the inside of his cheek, which is what a buccal swab is. They did penile swabs. That's item number 4 at that time. Number 5 says a DNA card represented as being from redacted. We believe that says Madeline. Number 6 is a left fingernail clipping from Madeline. So they're looking for DNA on her fingernails. Item 7 is a right fingernail clipping from Madeline. Item 8 is neck swabs from Madeline. And 8.1 and 8.2 are left neck swabs, right neck swabs. Item number 9 being right hand swabs from Madeline. Item 10 being left hand swabs from Madeline. Item 11, rectal swabs. Item 12, vaginal swabs. Item 12.1 is hair. Item 13 is breast swabs from Madeline. And item 14 is oral swabs from Madeline. And we can go back and forth so that we remember what this stuff is. All right. Let's see the results. Okay, item 3, buccal swabs from Stephan Stearns, a complete YSTR DNA profile was obtained from item 3. Oh, let's talk about why that's important, okay? When we're talking about STR analysis, we are not talking about the kind of DNA analysis that can be used for genetic genealogy. That is called SNP analysis. I have to remember what that stands for. It doesn't matter because we're not talking about it here, but it's SNP, single nucleotide polymorphisms, I think is what that stands for. But STR, this STR analysis really is intended only for a 1-to-1 match. If I have a sample and another sample, I can compare the two to see if they match, as opposed to a SNP analysis, which would be, here is, 300,000 different parts of the genetic markers, right, of the DNA, and 300,000 to 600,000 of them. It depends on who does it for you. And then you can create you can use that for genetic genealogy. This is not that. So when they took buccal swabs from Mr. Stearns, that was for the purpose of a 1-to-1 comparison. And that's important, okay? So item number 6 were left fingernail clippings from Madeline. And it says no YSTR DNA results were obtained from item 6. So that means that there is no male DNA from her left fingernail clippings. Item 10 are hand swabs from Madeline. And it says, due to the limited nature of the YSTR STR DNA results obtained from item 10, this data is not interpretable. So that is something that's actually pretty important. Sometimes when we look at this, bring it up for you again, there just aren't enough. The alleles are just really weak. There aren't enough to kind of like ping this chart. And so they will just say, we can't consider this for interpretation. So that's what that meant. So left-hand swabs, there wasn't enough Y-DNA for them to even determine whose Y-DNA it is, or even if there is Y-DNA there. Item 13, breast swabs represented as being from Madeline. Okay. A complete YSTR DNA profile was obtained from item 13. In the CODIS loci, there are minimum number of locations that can ping, let's call it, in order for it to be considered a complete profile. Here they're saying complete profile. These are swabs from Madeline's breasts, or her breast, I'm not sure which one. Okay, the YSTR DNA profile from Stephan Stearns, item 3, so the buccal swab, the inside cheek swabs from Stephan Stearns, matches the YSTR DNA profile obtained from item 13, which was the swab of Madeline's breast. According to the YHRD, which is a database that they use in law enforcement for statistical models, statistical analysis, this YSTR DNA profile is found in 0 of 29,207 total Y filer haplotypes. By applying a 95% upper bound confidence interval, again, this is a statistical analysis, it is equivalent to approximately 1 in every 9,750 male individuals. And I'm gonna keep reading, but I want to comment on this here in a second, okay? According to the YHRD, again, the database that they use for these analyses, the YSTR DNA profile is found in 0 out of 13,228 total Y filer plus haplotypes. By applying a 95% upper bound confidence interval, it is equivalent to approximately 1 in every 4,416 male individuals. Okay. So that doesn't sound all that strong when you're thinking of DNA, right? You like it's 1 out of every 4,000. So that DNA, if I do some quick math, say there are 350 million people in the United States, divide that by, let's say, 9,750, then there are 35,897 men in the United States that DNA could be. That's how I'm interpreting that. What's important to note, though, guys, is that in this report, they didn't do the complete CODIS STR analysis of 20 core loci. And I'm sure you're asking yourself now, well, why didn't they do that? The answer is probably they will do that. What I've learned by speaking to investigators and forensic technicians and doctors in labs is that there usually is a sequence of events in lab analyses. They usually will do the quantitative stuff first, and they will do qualitative stuff second. And so really they're looking in quantitative kind of stuff. They're just looking for the presence of things. These are very, I don't want to understate just how complex these are, but these in the modern world are simple. They go, let's try this. Let's just do this because it'll be faster and it will help us to narrow things down. For example, in toxicology, and I've been thinking about this all day because I was examining some exhibits at a courthouse today. I was examining a toxicology report on a defendant, and so this is the top of my mind. So what will happen in a toxicology report is they will do the quantitative stuff first. Okay, is there a presence of these things? Heroin metabolites, or opioid metabolites, benzodiazepines, and so on and so forth. Once they have determined that something is there, then they go on to the process of going, okay, well then how much is there? And so that's step number 2. It makes no sense for them to go, let's just run the full Monty on everything. It would take months and months and months, and resources would be tied up forever if they did that first. So when we're looking at this report, this to me represents a logical sequence of events. Okay, we believe that Madeline, based on the evidence that we have, the photographs and the videos taken off of Mr. Stern's phone, we believe that there would be a man, namely Mr. Stearns, essaying this little girl. Therefore, let's see if there is any male DNA on Madeline's poor little body. And that is what this appears to show us. Okay, we know there's male DNA, and we know that it matches the YSTR DNA analysis on the buccal swab. It matches, but it also could match with up to 35,000 other men. So now it is time to do the next step. And I believe that's what will happen next. It's probably already in the process of happening. And if you're questioning, if you're asking, well, do they have enough DNA to do this? Yeah, if they go through the polymerase chain reaction process, which is fascinating, guys. I love this sort of stuff. PCR, what it does is it heats up the DNA as it's floating in a solution. It heats it up to a certain temperature, and when that happens, it splits the pairs. So going back to this, see that helix? It will split it apart by heating it up to a certain temperature. It splits it apart, and then they add in what's called a primer, which, fascinating story, we won't get into it, and then they cool it down. And in the cooling process, each side of that split DNA will rebuild the other side. So if you had one piece of a DNA strand, when you go through that process of heating it up, cooling it down with the primer, it splits apart, you now have 2 copies. And when you do it again, you now have 4, and it happens, it doubles each time: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048. And you can do that about every 5 minutes. So if you do it for an hour, you end up with millions and millions and millions of copies of the DNA. So just because they took that one little buccal swab of Mr. Stearns, you think, oh, they just have this little DNA. No. They will amplify that. They will make copies of it. They will have DNA of Stephan Stearns' buccal swab coming out their ears. That's what's really, really cool about it. So when they move on to the second phase of this, they have plenty of DNA to work from. They can do the full analysis. Okay, let's finish out these remarks. Let me grab some water. Okay, remarks. PCR-based YSTR DNA analysis was performed on samples from items 3, 6, 10, and 13. Again, 3 is buccal swabs from sterns, 6, the left fingernail clippings, 10, left hand swabs, and 13, breast swabs. Utilizing the Y Filer Plus PCR amplification system. No testing was performed on the remaining DNA extracts, which is what we just talked about. The values were calculated following the suggestion of the Scientific Working Group on DNA Analysis Methods by counting method of all Y Filer Plus or Y Filer profiles listed within the YHRD, which is United States National Database with subpopulations, blah, 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 and the normal approximation 95% upper bound confidence interval. It's a statistical analysis. YSTR profiles are inherited paternally, which makes sense because when we go back to where was it? Let's look at, this actually isn't the best one, but when we look at the 23 DNA pairs, what is the word that I'm looking for? The chromosomal pairs. You either have an XX or an XY. Women have 2 X chromosomes in that pair. Men have 1 X chromosome, 1 Y chromosome. And so by saying that it is inherited paternally, yeah, it can only be passed from father to son, father to son, father to son. It is not passed any other way. With the exception of a mutational event, individuals from the same male lineage can be expected to share the same YSTR profile. It is also possible that unrelated males may share the same YSTR profile. Okay? That's just saying, okay, the YSTR profile for father to son is going to be the same unless there's some sort of genetic mutation. And lest you think that this is some sort of X-Men thing happening, there are genetic mutations that happen every single time a child is conceived. Okay? The half of the genetic material comes from the mother, half comes from the father, and then as it is building, there will be pairs, those nucleobase pairs that change. That's called a mutation, and that does happen. It happens, with frequency. And then it points out that it is also possible that unrelated males have the same STR profile on the Y chromosome. Okay, DNA extracts are being returned to the lab. It is recommended that all DNA extracts be stored according to the labeling on the package. And then it has abbreviations. CODIS is the Combined DNA Index System. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, so on and so forth. Okay. And then it's Carol Greenwald's thing. All right. So we've gone through a lot here, guys, but what is the good news? If I'm just going to put a silver lining on this dark, dark cloud, which is the protracted abuse and murder of this child, the silver lining is that there is a connection through DNA from Stephan Stearns to Madeline Soto. Thanks to the work of these folks, right, who did the not pleasant work. So, that's the silver lining. I want to take your comments now. Okay. Hopefully you guys have been looking at the lower side. If you are new to the channel, this is what we do on the channel. I really like to look at your comments. Patty Olson. Science class with Uncle Gavin. Yes, indeed. Let's go back. Maybe I should go up to the top. Let's see what you guys are saying. Lisa's first time at the live. Welcome, Lisa. Also, Kim, first time catching me live. I'm glad you're here, Kim. Thank you very much. Holy cow, Amy, first time. Thank you for being here. Lots of first timers catching the live. Barb Ellen Vanderwell says, Gavin, do you know if the DP is still on the table? Yes, they are seeking that on the murder charge. It's Florida. They'll do it. Autumn says, oh, yep, we did reach 112. We're actually kind of close to 113 now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for building this community. That means a lot to me. Garth B. Nutt says, Gavin, this makes me wish I paid better attention in science class. You know, I am really grateful for people like Ms. Green in the lab at the FDLE who can do these kinds of analyses. And also, I mean, Ms. Green in the trial will be called, likely, by the prosecution to talk about her analysis. And so not only does she have to be very good at her job in the lab, but she has to be able to present it to jurors in a way that helps them understand. And lest you guys think I really know what I'm talking about, I really don't. I mean, my understanding of DNA is so superficial. And Dr. Gruel, my buddy Matt has helped me immensely try to figure these things out. Angie Snoke, Gavin, do these findings mean Jen is auto-charged with help in Maddie's murder? I doubt. No. In fact, they haven't done any DNA analysis, as we've talked about, on anything other than male DNA, looking for male DNA. And if you guys notice on the April 10th of 2024 report from the FDLE, there are no swabs, it appears, from Jen. They're not looking to match any DNA from Jen so far, based on this. These items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 items are either from Stephan Stearns or little Maddie. So it's possible that they also will eventually or have taken buccal swabs from Jen and will be comparing things, but probably not until the next phase of DNA analysis. Great question. Mary says, Gavin, this is appealing to my nerdy side. Well, listen, I celebrate nerds in my life. I love nerdiness. I consider myself one, and as our children grew up and expressed a certain amount of academic nature, we were pretty happy about that. Nikki B1 says, Gavin, thank you for explaining this in such simple terms for us to understand. You've given the best breakdown and explanation about this so far. Great work. Well, thank you. It is in such simple terms because that is the level at which I understand it. Mooney says, Professor Gavin with the ascot. How did I not dress up as Professor Gavin? I should have. Mary says, how did I miss how Gavin learned all this? Hey, I will tell you how it started. It started in the Amanda Winkowski case. This right here is from the Amanda Winkowski case, from the documents in that case. And I was looking at this table going, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I called up Matt and he explained it to me. And then later on, he helped me understand more going through the Gabby Petito case and a couple of other cases. So this is just my own curiosity that drives me to learn about these sorts of things. I'm sure you all are the same, right? When you find something that you really want to learn about, you latch onto it. And in my case, my personality type is one where I don't have very much profound understanding of any one subject. I mean, there might be one or two I mean, I'm a very good pilot. I understand aviation pretty darn well. Um, just over years and years of experience, and just because I love it so much. And then maybe, I mean, that's probably it, come to think of it. But I do have lots of different interests, and so when I latch onto something like this, man, I dive headfirst. IT in IT, I have very good understanding of information technology and computer science. But anyway, I hope that there's somebody watching today that was like, whoa, I want to dive into this, because I think that the true crime community needs more researchers, more people that uh, are they like the content, they want to watch the content or listen to the content, but also have questions about, well, how did that happen, or how did they know that? And you let that curiosity drive you to a better understanding. Because my favorite part of true crime is the research. I love it. And I mean, I'm sorry, this is apropos of nothing, but today, let me just tell you something that I was thinking about. Um, I've told you guys about the trial that I covered last year, where the man was was diagnosed mentally ill with schizophrenia, and there was something that the district attorney said in his closing remarks about the toxicology report that did not ring true to me, and I think it just went over everybody's head in court, including the defense attorney. And I wanted to shout from the gallery, "You can't say that. That is not accurate," and nobody challenged him on it. And I have been fighting for access to these exhibits to actually look at the toxicology for months. And today I was at the court. They wouldn't let me copy anything, but they let me sit with all the exhibits. And I went right to that toxicology report. And sure enough, I was right. So that kind of thing, that maybe a micro obsessive compulsive disorder kind of tendency might drive you into more research and digging deeper into cases. I love it. I love it. I hope you do too. Oh, look at Panda Ann. You're helping me out. Polymerase chain reaction. I could not pull that out to save my life. Thank you very much. Let's see. Polymerase chain reaction, by the way, is a process that ended up winning the Nobel Prize for one of the sciences. I can't remember. But it's a process that hasn't changed in 40 years, something like that. Scrolling down just to see anything else. Meredith says hello. Hello, Meredith. A. Heineman, Gavin, phrasing. They'll have Stephan Stern's DNA coming out of their ears. Yeah, I have a little bit of my parents in me. Dieters Deli says, Gavin, hello. I made it from Washington State. Welcome. Stephan Stern's is toast. Yeah, the mountain of evidence against him is only growing. Let's see. We just refreshed. A couple more here. Path Tech Lisa, think he will plead now. I have always thought that he would plead, just because I don't see the upside for him. However, basically, I don't see the upside for him to go to trial, other than he's toast if he pleads. So maybe if he doesn't plead, there's an outside chance that he would win. I have never thought that this would go to trial. However, Duty Ron was in the chat one time when we were talking about that, and he's like, I will bet my pension that this will go to trial. And he is a person with much more experience than I have. So, yeah, I think I would trust Duty Ron's instincts more than mine. He probably will not plead, unless he thinks he might be able to get DP off the table. Joanna Kate, Gavin, But wouldn't his DNA be explained away because she was in his car and he dropped her off? So I think this is a great question, and I think a good criminal defense attorney will use something like that, trying to add some doubt to it. However, what the police in their testimony, the investigators, and the district attorney will point out is that Madeline was dressed, that she had clothing on, and this DNA came from her breast. So I don't think that they will get reasonable doubt with some kind of argument. Well, of course his DNA is on her. They live in the same house together. He folded her clothes. She was in his car, blah, blah, blah. I think that, you see, in a court of law, the judge is only the judge of the law. The judge of the facts and the judge of the credibility lies solely with the jury. They are the judges. They are the ones who judge credibility and facts. So keeping that in mind, would you as a juror say to yourself, oh yeah, that does make sense that DNA would be on her breast because she was in the car with him? I don't think you would. I think you would go to the other evidence that we've learned about, that I'm not going to talk about, but that describes how DNA got there or may have gotten there. And I think the jury would come to the reasonable conclusion that it was there because of the SA of her. That's what I think. That's my thought. Myrtle Burke says, Gavin, you're amazing. Thank you. But I just figured that they would have found more DNA of Stearns. Okay. They likely will. They only did the Y chromosome using an STR analysis. And I think that they will only use STR analysis here because they are looking for a one-to-one connection. They won't do the SNP analysis. They'll do STR, but they will do it on all 20 of the CODIS loci. And I think once they do that, they will find more DNA. Well, remember that they said item 10 didn't ping enough. It didn't ping enough in that one location. When they take into consideration the other loci, it may ping more. So there are, and also keep in mind, sorry, I'm just thinking about things. They did not, in this report, the March 10th report, this one, they did not do item 4, item 7, 8, including 8, 1, and 2. They did not do 9. They did not do 11, 12 or 12.1, or 14 in this report. My guess is after having done this report, this one here, they will move on to the qualitative side of the analyses. They will be gathering a lot. I think. Okay. Good comment. Good comment. Let's see. Joanna Kate says, Gavin, what if they find Jen's DNA in private parts on Maddie? Yeah, they would. If they're going to do a STR analysis, then they would have to get a buccal swab, some kind of DNA sample from Jen. I imagine that has already happened. I don't know that, but I would imagine in the course of a good investigation that would have already happened. We probably just don't know about it. If they do find that there, and yeah, they wouldn't want to do SNP analysis on that because there would be so much shared DNA between Maddie and Jen, but an STR analysis, they would definitely would definitely implicate her for sure. Channel 95 says, this is too much scientific detail for me. I love your channel, Gavin, but too much. Yeah, it's not for everybody. That's for sure. Kay Torietta asking, did they swab Jen? There's no indication in any report that I have seen yet, or that to my memory anyway, that there has been a swab, a DNA sample taken from Jen. But I believe that in the course of an investigation, a proper investigation, that would happen. Todd says, defense will also perform their own DNA analysis too, or is this report for both parties? It really depends. My guess is both parties will have this report for sure. Anytime there's been DNA in any case that I have covered, the DNA analyses that have been done by the state have been accepted by both the prosecution and the defense as valid reports. But typically what they would do after that is they would get their own experts to interpret the reports. So the prosecution would likely use the person who conducted the lab work, who did the analysis, as their expert. If the defense wanted to poke holes in the DNA, they would probably have to get their own defense expert. And I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that they might also try to get DNA done in some other lab. Keep in mind, though, that this is so expensive to do. Very expensive to do. Just for simple STR analyses like this one, they charge the case $4 or $5 grand, and it'll just add up. So unless they feel like there has been something untoward done in the lab, they feel like maybe the chain of custody wasn't kept, or there is something in the lab that could have, or someone in the lab who could have purposefully created a report that wasn't the truth. And by the way, that has happened. In Buffalo, New York, there was a lab technician that, when it found, basically what she was doing is she was just going, this person's guilty, I'm making up a report. And that caused problems for hundreds of cases that she worked on over the years. That's possible. So if they believe that that is happening in the FDLE lab, sure, it's their right to get another report from another lab. Meredith says, I hated learning about DNA and bio. It's so tedious. Great explanation. What's funny is in high school, and I didn't go on to the university. I went on to tech school. I did information technology, computer science through certification process and so forth. But so I didn't have biology in my higher education. In high school, I didn't either, because I had all of my science credits done early, and biology wasn't offered to a freshman. So I didn't do it either. It's only been in my adulthood that I've learned more about it. Maddie says, Gavin, you'd think they would test Jen too, since I'm pretty sure the defense will try dragging her into the case since she's a sad excuse of mother. Yeah, that would be a good strategy on their part. Jess says, nerds are the greatest people on the planet. Indeed. Linda likes the presentation. Thank you, Linda. Stephanie, Gavin just hopping on. Hi from Central PA. You should record a sleep app. I always fall asleep listening to you and have to re-listen the next day. I've got one of those voices, right? Yeah. That's funny. Roberta Hall says, I hear Jen isn't getting charged with anything. So far, I haven't seen any charges. I hope that there will be charges. Judith says, thank you, Gavin, for everything you do for Maddie. It's my pleasure, guys. You guys are so kind. Maggie May Mumbles says, Gavin, I just joined and started from the beginning. I just want to say hi. I've been catching up on all things Maddie via your playlist over the last week. Your kind soul. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Jamian Setseg McGregor. I butchered that. Gavin, my first time catching a live. Welcome. Graduated college in May of 2024 with a criminal justice degree. Good on ya. Jamian. That's awesome. Asking for my birthday, month, and day. You know what? I'm going to let it be a mystery. But those of you who have been around for the Ascot affair know my birthday. Jess says, I've learned so many things I never had interest in just because of a case I became passionate about. I'm in the same boat. Beach Fairy says, Gavin loved the research, all sorts going down rabbit holes. Glad you do. We are a rabbit hole kind of place. Bree says, Duty Ron is amazing. Just announced his cancer is gone. Well, that makes me happy for Duty Ron. That's awesome. Patty says, didn't expect science class with Uncle Gavin. You understand a lot of the DNA stuff. Well, I try. Jess says, I'm still here wondering how many people Stephan Stearns is protecting with his silence. Oh, like thousands. Haven't heard anything about Telegram or if they'll be able to get any of the info there. Yeah. A couple more. Just we're almost at an hour here. We don't want to go too far. Mooney says, Gavin, ultimately the initial DNA findings linked Stephan Stearns to Maddie. Correct. That is fantastic news. And now they continue the needed testing. Yes, indeed, Mooney. By the way, I think that's where I'm going to end it with comments. You guys, we don't know if it was semen or not. That would be, there would have to be a test to tell if it was semen, saliva, whatever. They would have to figure that out. Let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, Maddie was said to be wearing a hoodie. I do believe Jennifer Soto will face legal problems here eventually. I really, really hope. Hey, here's my little sis. Tiff saying, Gavin, give yourself props. You've always been very smart. Well, you're very kind because you're my sister. You think I'm smart, but I do my best. You guys have so many great comments. This is the last one because it's a super chat. Heather, whatever, just simply says thank you, and you're welcome, and thank you, Heather, whatever. I was thinking about Mooney. Mooney's like shaking her head right now. What is Gavin going to say about Mooney? Mooney is one of the people that came to my live event last January. She braved the northeastern winter and came to Western Pennsylvania for a live event. I am considering doing another live event, but doing it in Philadelphia, doing it on the Ellen Greenberg case. I want to make sure that I have the blessing of her parents on this. I talked to her mom today. I think it's probably a green light. We'll see. But I'm thinking about doing a live event near the end of the year, maybe in September or October in Philadelphia, talking about the Ellen Greenberg case. So I just want to plant that seed a little bit. If any of you would like to do a more intimate kind of crime conny kind of thing, I call it a crime convo. It's a conversation. If any of you are interested in that, just think about that, because I think I might be able to bring in some friends as well to talk about that case and maybe some others in Philadelphia, probably September, October timeframe. So just put that on your calendar. Before we go, it's shameless plug time. You guys know that you can find all the stuff that I have on Madeline. Most of it, man, I need to spend an entire Saturday getting all the stuff up here. But just go to gavinfish.com, click on cases, click on Madeline. There's a link directly below in the description if you want to just click on that. My website's just always a great place for information on the cases that I cover, including Maddie. If you ever want to contact me, go ahead and click on that little envelope that will take you to a form. which will send me an email address. I do look at all of those. I get a lot of them. I don't respond to all of them, but I do look at all of them. If you click on this little fishy right here, that will open up the fish tank. If you're on Facebook and you like to talk about true crime, that's a good place to do it. I invite you to join us there on the fish tank. It's like 3,800 of us now. So definitely do that. Last shameless plug, crimecod.com is my true crime news website. You can read all about cases that are in the public zeitgeist and not. And you can subscribe to my newsletter down at the bottom, either of crimecod.com or of gavinfish.com. I'm hoping to turn that into a daily newsletter with news and information and stuff in the true crime world. With that, guys, man, I'm so glad that we spent this time together. Let's do it again. Let's do it tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern, right here. I hope you'll join me then. Until then, I bid you adieu. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.